The Israeli terror forces carried out multiple strikes against civilian Yemeni targets, including what Israel said was the presidential palace and other locations inside of Yemen. Reports said that 10 were killed inside of Yemen due to these Israeli attacks. Israel has been trying to constantly take down and eliminate, if possible, the Yemeni threat, but Yemen doesn't seem to be taking down its intensity. And as a matter of fact, after the Israeli attack, they said that we're going to actually escalate and we're going to increase our attacks against Israel. The recent attack that provoked Israel to carry out the recent response, because of course Israel started all of this by this genocide and the constant attacks against all of the region's countries, was after Yemen targeted Israel with a multi-warhead missile or cluster bomb that released multiple explosions inside of Israeli territories. Israel was very disturbed by these scenes, and more people are telling the Yemeni side, look, you're getting missiles from Iran, clearly. Yemen is responding, is there anything wrong in getting missiles from Iran? No, we don't care. We're getting those missiles, and we're going to increase the attacks against Israel up until they stop the genocide against the Palestinian people. And with the traditional approach of Yemen, they always do that with a smile. Here we have al-Bukhaiti, one of the senior figures in Ansarullah, responding to, talks casually. These people are very relaxed, They'll tell you, oh, the Americans, Israelis, they want us to de-escalate. And listen, if there's only one Yemeni remaining, he said, if only one Yemeni remains, he will be fighting Israel. He will be fighting the Zionist American aggression against us. These people show constantly the nature that is just different, really, with these constant attacks against the genocide forces and against the Israeli forces inside of occupied Palestine. Now, more talks are coming about disarming Hezbollah. The American envoy to the region, Barak, was saying, okay, yeah, Israel needs to take a step in response to what Lebanon is doing, pretending as if he is, a mediator, he's not taking anyone's side. Hezbollah came up with a response to all of this today with a statement by the Secretary General. He said, we reject this step-by-step thing. There is no step-by-step. We take a step and then Israel takes a step. First and foremost, there is no disarming of the Lebanese resistance. Disarming us is like disarming our soul. And when we feel like that threat is about to happen, or in those words, then the world will see our might. And that's not stopping there. They're now planning protests inside of Lebanon, both combined with the Amal movement, two of the largest groups inside of Lebanon who oppose these moves being taken by the Lebanese government. This is the first move that's coming from Hezbollah that will be a significant show of popular support. They didn't take to the streets yet. Well, whatever we saw in Lebanon, like some people protesting here and there, there was just gatherings. But they're planning, alongside the Amal movement, to have a national protest on the 27th to reject the government decisions that they consider to be against the sovereignty of Lebanon. This will be the beginning of the show of strength coming from Hezbollah, because they told them, we have been patient, and we've been patient for a very long time, and now it's time to take action. That will show the Lebanese government, that is heavily influenced by the United States and Israel, the reality of things, that the resistance still has a heavy popularity that will remain there, and it's Israel that has to take actions to de-escalate, rather than the Lebanese government going and asking the resistance to disarm when you have occupation in your territories, backed by the same people who are portraying themselves as peacemakers. Which leads us to Gaza. The barbarism is continuing, with the genocide forces today targeting the Nasser hospital complex, killing journalists. Again, they targeted the area that houses journalists and where some journalists stay to report. Patients were killed, doctors were killed, and then rescue services were killed too. Why? Because when Israel targeted the location, they had the rescue services coming to try and help. They had another strike against them, killing and wounding some of them as well. 11 people died of starvation. The Israeli imposed American-backed and many countries-backed starvation. 11 people were starting to see more and more 2 digits a day, a question of time, up until this reaches to hundreds per day or thousands, or God forbid, tens of thousands a day, due to the Zionist-imposed starvation campaign and the famine that is beyond catastrophical now inside of the Gaza Strip. So this attack targeted deliberately, again, Al Jazeera crew, cameraman Muhammad Salam and 4 other journalists were killed in the Israeli strike. Then, of course, the rescue services, some of the healthcare staff and patients, a typical Israeli attack. But there was something a little bit different this time. The IDF chief of staff all of a sudden is saying that we need to have an inquiry. We need to have an inquiry, and he regrets harm to civilians. IDF Chief Staff Fayal Zamir has ordered an immediate inquiry into this morning's strike against Nasser Hospital in southern Gaza, Khan Yunis. The military says IDF confirms that troops carried out strikes in the area, which, according to the Hamas-run health ministry, killed 20. 4 journalists are said to be among the dead. So the number is higher than the initial number that I stated, clearly by the verified numbers of the health ministry of Gaza, the ministry that actually verifies every death when they declare, by the way. And they deal with the numbers of deaths in Gaza in high levels of professionalism, because they need to have the relevant checks. They know that over 10,000 are almost definitely killed, but they won't tell you that they're killed because they haven't retrieved the body, they haven't conducted the checks. And of course, it's more and more difficult to identify, with Israel even preventing the people from getting to the bodies. He is saying that, oh, we regret it, and we didn't really mean to. But it wasn't just only him. It was also Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu showing regret, and all of a sudden, as if these people do not really intend to have these attacks against the civilian population. And he made that statement, Benjamin Netanyahu, in English. What did he say exactly? Benjamin Netanyahu released a statement in English regarding the killing of journalists on the Nasser hospital, stating that Israel deeply regrets the tragic mishap that occurred today at the Nasser hospital in Gaza. Israel values the work of journalists, medical staff, and all civilians. The military authorities are conducting a thorough investigation. The statement added that our war is with Hamas. Our just goals are defeating Hamas and bringing the hostages home. Therefore, Benjamin Netanyahu is showing regret for this action, as if Israel didn't kill over 250 journalists, more than all of the world wars combined, more than every other conflict in history, more than whatever you wanted. Genocide, urbanicide, scholasticide, journalisticide, everything. Total destruction. But they're pretending that, we didn't really mean it. And, we show regret to these things that happen. Why are they also saying that? to try and show Donald Trump as well. Donald Trump as well, he said he's not happy about the 20 Israeli strikes happening in the Gaza hospital. As a matter of fact, Donald Trump also came up with very important news. He said that conclusive deal is going to happen within like weeks, within 2 to 3 weeks. These people have been fighting for so long, and a conclusive deal is going to happen within 2 weeks. Several months back, he said we're just days away and a week away, and over the weekend and next week, Netanyahu makes it impossible to reach any sort of deal. Trump and his administration, as if nothing happened, everything is fine, no problem whatsoever. But he comes up with a statement now as if, everything is about to end and within a few weeks. So if you believe Donald Trump, there you have it. But the thing is, and it's very, very justified and very normal for everyone to lose every ounce of trust and faith in whatever they say, because Israel has been conducting a genocide, getting away with it, breaking ceasefires, breaching ceasefire deals, all of that, and being enabled and allowed to have more time. The United States and other countries buying Israel more time. But now there was an interesting statement coming also from the IDF chief of staff, who was known to prefer a ceasefire over the continuation of this campaign in Gaza City, that he knows and has said that will lead to more casualties from the Israeli army and will be a risk to the Israeli prisoners of war. As a matter of fact, Donald Trump, he said that there might be less than 20 now, when he had a chat with Steve Witkoff, to the surprise of the prisoners of war. They were like, at least tell us if there are less, if more are dying. Maybe how about you let us know? And they're showing more distrust now in the United States administration, especially after recently they carried out, they issued a statement, and they said that clearly the American preference is not here anymore. But now Trump is saying 3 weeks. What did Eyal Zamir say? Eyal Zamir said that there is a hostage deal on the table and we need to take it. Despite all of the talks coming from Israel now that we're not going to go into another deal, we're not going to go into a temporary deal, we're going to continue up until we achieve the mission, the chief says, I think there's a deal and we need to take it. He said that in a recent visit that he made in Haifa. So clearly he's showing more signs that are not in line with Benjamin Netanyahu, because Benjamin Netanyahu is officially saying that, no, we need to have an all-out deal, no more temporary deals. Yet the IDF chief of staff saying there's a deal on the table and we have to take it now. So there's clearly a difference there. But how likely is Benjamin Netanyahu to reach this deal? That depends on multiple developments internally. One of his previous allies and, people who left him and came back and left him and came back, Benny Gantz, who was in the war cabinet in the beginning of the genocide, later on resigned. He was calling for the opposition to join a government that will be a government for relief or to support or release the Israeli prisoners of war. He faced immediate threats and, criticism from the opposition parties in Israel, telling him, how dare you? How can you do that? You're not genuine. But what that shows is there are more plans within the opposition to form a bigger government with Benjamin Netanyahu to make him bulletproof up until the next elections in case he goes into a deal. He was offered a safety net by the opposition leader. That safety net clearly wasn't satisfactory for Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, the Benny Gantz is trying to offer him something a little bit more lucrative, a little bit more attractive. He's getting criticism for it, but he clearly doesn't care because he knows his political future is almost over. So that's kind of his last attempt to try and rescue himself, and also give Netanyahu the backing to reach a deal, because any deal would mean Smotrich and Ben Gvir are out. So what are the Arab and Muslim states doing? Well, there was an emergency meeting of the Islamic Cooperation Organization in Jeddah, in Saudi Arabia. And there were statements by multiple leaders. One of the people leading the actual event was the Turkish foreign minister. The Turkish foreign minister said a couple of things. He said that the Palestinians need our collective action. And he said that they are calling now for a mobilization of international community to end this war. And he's saying that the actions of the states did a lot of work. It did a lot of work in shifting the public opinion in Western countries. And a few notes here. I mean, there has been a genocide going on for 2 years, and shifting public opinions from a government's perspective is something that is handed to the Minister of Communication and anyone under that department. As far as I know, I might be ignorant, but I mean, isn't the Ministry of Communications and Media responsible for certain things? And then they do that, but countries focus on what actually matters and what they can do, not just public opinion, especially when people are being slaughtered and starved to death, like actual mobilization, actual cutting of ties, actual financial pressure, actual diplomatic pressure. Plus, thankfully, the public and the people themselves shifted the opinion everywhere across the world, from the person who posts to the person who protests to the person who publishes a video or a clip or whatever. This is another move coming from the Arab and Muslim countries to try and make the people like something is being done. Hardly anything is being done. To be very specific, hardly anything has been done by the Arab and Muslim states in their majority to prevent this genocide. No decisive diplomatic action, no decisive financial action, no decisive military action. Nothing whatsoever. Moves here and there and attempts and theatrics, theatrics to try and show the people that, something is happening. That's not enough. If you're trying to convince the people that you're doing something by saying that we're calling the international community for mobilization, what do you mean exactly? What mobilization? The people starving and being killed, they don't have time to wait for calls for mobilization. You have been calling for mobilization, all of the Arab and Muslim states calling and calling and calling. Until when are you going to talk? We've had enough of talking. Either take decisive action or just don't talk. I mean, really. Especially now with more Americans talking. Recent a video was published on social media by an American soldier who was going under investigation for social media posts criticizing Israel because they considered him to be a threat to national security. Let's have a quick look at this video.
So after 20 years of service in the military, yesterday I got pulled into an officer's office and counseled for posts that I have on my social media. During the counseling, they told me I'm under investigation as a threat to national security. When I asked for proof, like what the posts were yesterday, they refused to give it to me. They made me come back today to further go over stuff. They gave me the proof, and the proof they gave me are anti-Israel posts. Now, when I joined the military, I took an allegiance to support the United States of America. I did not ever take an allegiance to support Israel. But yet, I am deemed a threat to national security because I do not support Israel and their genocide against the Palestinian people. Yes, you heard that right. I am deemed a threat to national security because I don't support Israel's genocide against the Palestinian people. Since when does not supporting a foreign nation get a U.S. soldier investigated for being a threat to national security?
This man has more guts than the majority of the Arab and Muslim leaders combined, because based on his position in the American army, in the establishment, him, of course, and his people like him, whether they were in the army or from the public, or people who had to face certain pressure and certain challenges and went ahead with it. These are people taking action. What we're seeing from the Arab and Muslim states is not action. People like that, they are taking action. And that is crucial, because more and more people are going out and talking now, despite the suppression, despite all of the attempts. But from the beginning of the genocide up until now, dozens have spoken up and made it public, criticized. They started to participate and being more vocal, despite, again, that they're being faced with. And that's something that is going to be a problem for the future. What is it going to be? It's going to be the American foreign policy, not just in relation to Israel, but in relation to the world as a whole. If Israel is done and over, and the United States still has the capacity to create something similar and support it on the land of Palestine, that's going to be a very big problem. And the recent statements that were made by Marco Rubio in relation to Venezuela show you exactly how dangerous the American foreign policy is. Let's hear what he had to say about Venezuela and the confirmation that American troops are being deployed to that region. Let's have a look.
Agreed to have elections. The elections were completely fake. They leveraged migration against us to get those concessions. And now they have these general licenses where companies like Chevron are actually providing billions of dollars of money into the regime's coffers. And the regime kept none of the promises that they made. So all that needs to be re-explored, because in Venezuela, you have the Russian presence, you have a very strong Iranian presence. The Iranians, in fact, are beginning to build drone factories for the manufacture of Iranian drones in our own hemisphere. Not to mention the long practice of the Venezuelan regime of providing real but illegitimate passports to operatives for Hezbollah in our own hemisphere. And lastly, and I leave it lastly to Cuba, agreed to have elections. The elections were completely fake.
So the man clearly warmongering against Venezuela, and they're taking actions. Like, for example, this was just reported several days back, US sends troops to Southern Caribbean, a new threat to Venezuela. The action was announced by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who called the Venezuelan government a criminal organization. He's calling the president of Venezuela, by the way, a leader of a gang, a leader of this criminal organization. Maduro is the leader of the Cartel de los Soles, Cartel of the Suns, an alleged criminal organization. And they're of course calling it a terrorist group. Therefore, the Venezuelan president is the head of a terrorist organization, according to Marco Rubio. They're also saying that, these people want to control the cartels. That's why they're sending troops over there to control the cartels that bring poison to the United States. He stated that drug trafficking is a threat to the United States security. And again, he called Maduro the head of a criminal organization. But a criminal organization that's prescribed as a terrorist organization means the head of a terrorist organization, which means, well, basically, we can go and kill him. That's what he's saying. Warmongering. So Maduro and others and all of these claims and bringing poison to the US is a problem, but the United States invading Afghanistan and bringing tons of poison in CIA planes back to the United States is not a problem. The United States running cartels is not a problem. The United States bringing cartels to power is not a problem. The United States bringing criminal organizations to power and having coups in Latin America is not a problem. Marco Rubio himself being an Israeli puppet inside of the United States is not a problem. None of that is a problem. You see, that in itself is the problem. Because let's say they finished with Israel and it's done and everything is fine, they still have the same policy. And the same people who serve either in the authorities or its agencies or the United States Army, that's a wake-up call for all of that. Because if you're gonna send people now to go to the Caribbean or to Latin America, to Venezuela, anywhere, to have a coup, basically, because they already recognized an alt president not long ago, disregarding any elections, of course, because they don't like them. I mean, in Palestine, Hamas won the elections. Previous American president, Jimmy Carter, monitored them, said they were the most democratic elections in the history of the Arab world. What did the United States do? They immediately supported Israel to impose an embargo on the Gaza Strip. So long as this approach coming from the United States is there, we will continue to have problems. And that is the deal. That is the big issue. Not certain statements here and there, and that the war is going to end in 1 day or 2 to 3 weeks, like Donald Trump has been saying for so long. To the people who voted for him, everything was supposed to be over and done with by February, max. You know what I mean? He was saying, oh, well, I'm going to finish everything in a day. 1 day, 2 days, 1 month, 2 months, 8 months, nothing is happening.